Good evening, everyone. I know you're enjoying the food and the conversation, but I just want to get the evening started. On behalf of the trustees and the overseers, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Museum of Science tonight for tonight's event. My name is Ching Pham, and I'm the chair of the Fundraising Events Committee. I think we have to come up with a better name than that. And a longtime overseer here at the museum. I want to thank you, all of you, for joining us this evening. And as we celebrate expert mountaineer and videographer Thom Pollard. Thom is here tonight to share his stories of adventures atop some of the highest peaks on Earth, including Mount Everest, which he just summited for the first time in May of 2016, something that I don't think I will ever do in my lifetime. Thom will share with us his stories of his close relationship with Brad Washburn, founder and director of the museum. Brad himself was an expert cartographer, mapping some of the most important peaks in the United States, including Mount Washington. Now, and in the spirit of sharing tales of adventure, we'd like to invite you to join us for our 11th annual Washburn Challenge event weekend on Sunday, July 9th. And here to describe the Washburn Challenge is event founder Mike Thonis. But before Mike comes up, I was told, I apologize. There are these index cards on your table, and if you have any questions, please fill them out, and then there'll be people collecting the cards, and the questions will be answered. Okay? Well, thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Chen. And thank you, Thom, for coming. Where did you end up? Oh, in the back. Okay, thank you. I'm going to introduce you in a moment, the star of our event tonight. Although I do already want to know, this doesn't look that hard to me.
Which route?
Those look to me like snowboarder trails, those furrows. Is that what those are? Yeah, okay. So I also want to, before I start doing anything, I just want to point out that my beautiful wife's beautiful mother, also known as my beautiful mother-in-law, bought me this tie for my birthday, which was Sunday. You like it? All right. I just wanted to point that out because apparently I'm being filmed, and I thought if this ends up on PBS, Marge would see it. Yeah, so plan ahead. In fact, that's what the hike's all about, planning ahead. All right, so I think, why are you all here? It's possible some of you just wandered in, but I think you're all here because you share an interest in hiking, or use a bigger word, mountaineering. I always think mountaineering is the umbrella term, but it includes a lot of terrific things. Hiking being one. There's, you can say mountain hiking. If you go down the Grand Canyon, that's canyon hiking. There's a lot of different ways. Hiking around your town. I mean, it's. I think you all probably like walking and hiking and things like that, or maybe just being in the outdoors. That's why you're here. On Sunday, as Jen said, on Sunday, July 9, the museum will host the 11th Washburn Challenge. Some of you were part of the 10th year anniversary last year, and I thank you for that. I had a lot of fun. I think everyone did. And the 11th will be even more fun. That's our goal. Our goal is to make it more fun year after year. Maybe exponentially. Is that possible? Why did I start this thing, and what is it? Why do I keep doing it? I mean, it's fun. It's complicated, actually. It's funny because it was really simple. The first year I said it was because of my dad, who loved the museum. My dad was an orphan. A lot of you heard the story. He was an orphan in South Boston, 9 years old. Both parents had died, separate causes. And he was at an orphanage, and he would sneak out of the orphanage and come over to the museum. And I guess back then it was free. And it was not here, actually. It was over on Berkeley Street. But he took us to the museum ritually every year. And a lot of you have that story. And a lot of people who visit the museum will reflect on how they were here as kids. Or they bring their kids or something. But it's also for adults. And I think this event is generally an adult-oriented event and demonstrates that. But for me, it's become, every year we do this, and I reflect on why it is I keep doing it or what I like about it. It gets a little more complex in my mind, a little not nuanced, but a little more layered. And so for me, it's a love of just general love of the museum. It's respect for my dad. It's sort of general love of the museum. A huge respect for Brad Washburn, who I only met briefly once. Tom's spent a lot of time with him, actually. There's been some interesting intersections of my own with Brad, but I'm going to leave those out tonight. And I think just generally speaking, this benefits the annual fund. That's hugely important. Annual funds get kind of minimized a little bit. People think, oh, the annual fund, oh, that's not like the capital campaign. But actually, annual funds in all nonprofit organizations are key. If the annual fund goes down 10%, just the annual fund goes down 10%. Forget, memberships and attendance. If just the annual fund goes down 10%, it's a major problem for a nonprofit. Nonprofits count desperately on their annual funds. And the annual fund money gets used in some really good ways. I mean, it makes the place work, but it gets used to continually build, at the museum here, it gets used to continually build a better and better museum. It isn't just big gifts. So those are reasons, and I'm sure next year there'll be even other reasons for why I feel so strongly about this event. How many people here? If you raise your hand, it's a good thing. How many people here have never climbed Mount Washington? My wife. Ooh, there you go. There's an opportunity. I don't mean by car now. I mean, never come. So that was quite a number of people. I don't know how to ask this without making it kind of nutsy, but I'm going to hypothesize that for some of you, it's not because you don't have the time, really. It's because you're just a little nervous about it. Like, you're not quite sure what you do. You hear all these horror stories, and you're thinking, my God, I'm going to have all this specialized gear, and I'm going to have to go spend like a weekend at REI or something and figure it out. So maybe I won't ask the question, but I'm going to just hypothesize that for a lot of you, it's just a little bit of nervousness, intimidation, worry about it. And what I'd like to say is that we are working hard at the museum to figure out ways to just make it nothing but fun and make it very easy to do for anybody who's never done it before. And make it also okay not to actually succeed. Go out there, give it a try, get halfway up and say, you know what, this was fun. One idea we've had, it's just an idea right now, is that, I'm a geologist. I don't know if you all know that, but my roots are geology. Susie knows that. It's like she won't let me drive anymore because it's always, looking at the outcrops on the pike. But I'm fundamentally a geologist. I did spend my career in the investment world, but I never gave up my geology, and now I'm pretty much fully back at it. And maybe it's just my leading a trip up for people and doing a little bit of science, or maybe we have a biologist or a botanist come along and do a little bit of science. So if you think that's a good idea, and it'd be a slow-mo hike up the mountain for purposes of not athleticism necessarily, but more about science. So if that resonates, let us know, okay? I see some nodding heads, but let us know because, do affirmatively let us know because that's something we could do. So I mentioned fun. We do, it is fun. It's been huge fun. I don't think we've advertised it correctly, but it's been tremendous fun. It's a huge amount of camaraderie. People get together. We go as groups. The groups split up a little bit, but after the event, sometimes the night before, sometimes during, after the event. This year after the event, every year after the event we have a dinner party, and this year it's at the Mount Washington Hotel. That happened one year. It was a huge success. We're back to trying it this year. We're going to do it again this year. It's a blast, and so throughout the day and afterwards, there's a great opportunity to make friends. I tell you the truth, a couple of my now best friends I met through this activity. And if I didn't meet them through this activity, I've gotten to know them through this activity. So I think that's all I have to say about that. You all have the cards for the save the date cards, and if you want to go online and see more about it, it's mos.org/challenge. So mos.org is the museum's website for everything. /challenge is what you need to remember. So now I want to introduce Thom Pollard. Is that the right way to? Okay, you got to be nice to me and say yes. All right, you can correct me later. Thom and I have met a couple times, but I've never introduced him. So this is a privilege for me, Thom. Thom is the owner of Eyes Wide Open Productions, which makes films, I believe. Well, I know they do, but there may be other things. But he's the owner of that. You'll hear more about that. He's also vice president of production for Great Northern Network's digital signs. Take note, digital signs up north, and if you need one, see Thom. He climbed Everest. I think this is right. Climbed Everest in 1999 for Nova and BBC. Is that generally right? You can correct me when you get up here or now. And that was really to find George Mallory's body, which I think you found at 27,000 feet or so. Where would that be? Like about there? That's a different mountain. That's not the mountain. It was a different mountain. Oh, right. All right. Well, that was embarrassing. Okay. And then Thom did Everest again in 2014. Really to accompany the oldest man, the oldest person, I guess, to try to climb it. Although I think it didn't work out because that was the year where there was, I think, a collapse of the ice wall, right, the ice fall. And I think as many as 16 people were killed in that one event. And I think they closed the mountain. Is that what happened? So you missed out on that, but you were there. He directed a movie among, well, many movies, but one in particular, he directed a movie called Thin Air, the New England Everest Expedition. He's filmed multiple specials with Brad Washburn and has won multiple awards, including an Emmy. So our very own guest speaker tonight is a celeb, and deservedly so. So Thom, thank you very much. I wrote here, etc., because I'll use up all your time listing it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike Thonis. And really have to say a quick thank you to the organizers, Rachel DeMaster and Gina Crotty, who did a lot of work to get this up and running tonight. So awesome job. And Ching Pham, who I finally got to meet tonight, a great guy. Thank you for getting things started tonight. Yeah, so all those things, I guess, are pretty much true that Mike said. I think that, like fishermen, mountain climbers tend to be really good liars because we tell stories about how crazy things were, and none of it's really always true. But one of the things that I did do for you tonight, and you're welcome to come up at any time and check it out, is this is all the stuff that I wore to the summit in May. And I never really thought that was that interesting until I did a talk for a group of kids at a school, these little kids, and they went nuts over it. So all this stuff was on me when I summited in May of 2016. And kind of cool. You can check it out. You'd think like I'd just be crazy with the gloves and everything, but went super thin layer on gloves, just this little thin layer of a leather, and just went super duper light. But let me tell you, those little hand warmers, you open the packet up, boom, I had plenty of those. Those are not, as I say, you get to the summit, there's no such thing as cheating. You just get there, and that's fine with me. So, it's been an interesting journey, and I've done a lot of cool trips, and one of the reasons I became a filmmaker really was so I could go cool places with really cool people and delve into the remarkable of the world, and then leave and go do something else with remarkable people. And it was never my intent to be one of those guys, but just to kind of rub elbows with them. And so case in point, I didn't mean to make Mike feel bad or anything, but that's not Everest. That actually is, that's Shivling in northern India. And I was doing a film for public broadcasting, a TV show called Now on PBS, which no longer exists. It was with a guy named David Brancaccio, who you probably hear on the radio a lot now. But down in the lower right, that's me and Conrad Anker, who has been a big part of my adventure career, particularly with discovery of the body of George Mallory, which I'll show you a little bit about. But, for me, it was always about following a path of something that I really wanted to do. And, Mike had said earlier also I won a lot of awards. I guess you could kind of say a lot of those awards early on were given to me by my mom. And that's, she was always like, "You're amazing. You're just the best at anything." And yeah, you're so incredible. I did get an Emmy Award and things like that. But what I really did for my mom was just make her scared all the time, because I'd always do stupid stuff and go, "Okay, you can't believe it. I didn't put a rope on, and we were like 4,000 feet up, and if you fell, you'd just disappear." And what? But she was really into stuff like that. But she was like, "You're not going to go back to that Mount Everest again, are you?" And so I always, but that was what my mom and dad did for me. They were just like, go after the things you want to do, and if you love what you do, you're going to be happy. And I'm for the most part, I'm happy. I gruel it out just like everybody else, but I did find out about ice climbing at a relatively late age. I was 27 years old. I was working as an NBC TV reporter in Springfield, Massachusetts, and my brother took me ice climbing up in North Conway. And it was like literally the second my crampon hit the ice, I was like, this is it. I got it. Now I know. And like within a year, I had quit my job, been to Chamonix, France twice, climbing, doing all this stuff, and just like pursued full on everything toward being an adventure documentary filmmaker. This is closer to home, right where I live now. This is a guy named Jerry Handren, a Scottish dude, great climber back in probably 1980 something right there, and climbing a really hard route. He was already pushing 512 of 513, and of course I'm hanging on the rope because there's no way in hell I could climb 512 or 14 or whatever those guys did. But that was it. So I would do these little films on Hi8 video cameras and travel around the world and bring my videos back. And nowadays we can email and upload on Vimeo or YouTube or whatever. But I would make these short little documentaries, put them on a VHS tape and send them to the Discovery Channel or National Geographic or PBS, hoping that someone would latch on to the work that I was doing and think, this guy's doing the good stuff, we should give him a shot. And so where things really started to have a turn for me was when I went to Alaska in, I always forget the year, it was 92 or 93, and I was guiding with International Mountain Climbing School on the west rib of Mount McKinley. You can see my little Hi8 video camera there, which I still have. It doesn't work. I destroyed it on this particular trip. But this was a turning point for me because I encountered a storm of pretty incredible conditions and learned a lot about what the mountains can do to punish a person who dares go into the heights. So I'm going to show you a short little clip and then I'll kind of transfer it from there. But this is called Storm over Denali. Okay, here's what's happening. It's about 8:30 at night and the winds are prevailing at about 50 to 70 knots. But however, we're protected by an arête that goes up about 20 feet behind our tent, and the slope goes straight down below us. The forecast is that the temperatures will stay the same, which is about 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and the winds will increase, coming from the same direction to 70 knots at least. All right, so that's just a little snippet of this storm that came in and hit our tents at about 16,000 feet. And all the guys that we were guiding, except for one, had kind of chickened out of the climb. We were going up all this steep stuff, and they're like, I have gout in my toe, I have to go home. So like with all these really weird things, I was like never even heard of gout at the time, and we sent the guy home. My stomach is acting up. We sent this guy home. And ended up me, one of the other guides, and another climber. That storm ultimately destroyed our tent, and we dug a little snow cave in the belly of the mountain. And, here I am taking pictures, trying to videotape it, and this is when my camera died, right in here, because it was all, kind of getting steamy in there and everything. But I really thought I was going to lose both my feet during that trip. And somewhere in there, I dug down deep, and all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, I'm really, really good at this. This is not even remotely putting me to my limit. Like I've got this so, and we literally thought people were dying around us, and fortunately nobody died during this storm. But I was like, this is just so what I'm put on this planet to do. So I created this film, as you saw a snippet of it, called Storm Over Denali, and I sent it to a bunch of people, including none other than who I did not know at the time was going to become my mentor, Bradford Washburn. And sent it to his house. Somebody gave me his address, and he called my house, and the movie was not even into the credits. It was only like 25-minute film. And he's like, "This is incredible." He was going crazy. "This is the best film I've ever seen on Mount McKinley." He goes, "This is what film should be." And I was like, "Oh my God, it's Brad Washburn." I was like in awe, like shaking practically. "Come to my house, you have to see me." So actually I ended up coming here to the museum, went up to his office, and that began a probably 12 or 13-year long friendship and mentorship that brought Brad and I to Alaska together and producing films, going back to some of the footage that he filmed in Alaska, going back to the 1930s. And we spent inordinate amounts of time together. He'd call me every Christmas, every New Year's, tell me stories that I can't repeat here, that Barbara would always like, "Brad, stop that right now." And so I was like kind of like his guy, and it was really cool. And he would tell me that when I'd bring it back my pictures, and he'd tell me if I was framing them right and how to take care of my camera equipment and how not to let my camera die in the middle of a snow cave. But the time I spent with Brad was really joyful, and as I had said, I spent some time with him in Alaska for about 2 weeks with Barbara, and we did a film together called Alaskan Reminiscences, 60 Years of Adventure with Bradford and Barbara Washburn. And here's just a little snippet of that film, and let's see if we can get this playing.
What are you climbing?
We're doing more of a travel route.
Well, Brad, like other people, I guess I was lucky enough to meet in my life, was a real mentor of mine. And even before I met him, he was a mentor in that I was just fascinated and overwhelmed by his incredible photography. And I think he had the same influence on many climbers. Those amazing black and white photograph images that he produced inspired us all to go and climb. I mean, that's often what is the first real draw in the mountains, is a picture of a mountain. Never man to waste time, as we all know. When he saw something he liked that was important, he got right to it. He wrote it right then, and it's good not to procrastinate in life. So,
The thing that I really enjoyed very, very much throughout my life, particularly after I got old enough so I wasn't doing these wonderful climbs myself. And that was that I would write articles in the American Alpine Journal of 1 or 2 routes that I thought hadn't been climbed, and sort of doing that, put the route on a picture, and then Ad Carter, the editor of the journal, would print them, and then I'd just sort of sit and wait and see how they did it. And I've had a lot of fun out of that.
Among all the HMC climbers, Harvard Mountaineering Club climbers in the early 60s, my group, I was the one who really took on Alaska as my playground. I went there 13 years in a row on expeditions. And so that after Brad had told us to climb at Wickersham Wall, it was completely logical to go to his fabulous collection of pictures to look for subsequent challenges. And he would let me, at 20 or 21, go up into the sanctum in the top floor of the Museum of Science and go into his walk-in closet and pour through those bound volumes of all his contact prints.
Why don't you take a look? If it works, it'll be in stereo.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You can.
Brad would say that if he was remembered for nothing else, he would hope that he would be remembered as the founder, director of the Museum of Science. And what he really did is turn a moribund, dusty old attic of a museum into one of the great science museums in the world. I mean, it would have been enough to ensure a glorious career to have done what he did with the Museum of Science. That was a phenomenal job. But he was also, I believe, the greatest climber in Alaskan history. And the greatness is that he After his first few expeditions, which were failures, he never had a failure. Every mountain he set out to climb, he climbed. Nobody else has a record like that. And every one except McKinley was a first ascent. Plus he pioneered the West Buttress on McKinley. He was also, I think, one of the two greatest mountain photographers of all time, with Vittorio Sella. And he was one of the great map makers, and really, in a true sense, an explorer. And don't you think this is setting a bad example for the kids who want to play on Mount Everest? You know, Brad always said he really wanted to climb Mount Everest, but he never had a chance to, because it was basically closed during both Nepal and Tibet were closed during the 40s, and of course the war was going on. Brad stuck to Alaska and the Yukon.
Pretty amazing guy, and cool that this challenge is named after him. You know, Brad, after we met, he really encouraged me to spread my wings and go and take on challenges. And one of the first big trips I did after we spent some time together was to go to Pakistan and attempt Gasherbrum 2, which isn't really that difficult of a mountain necessarily, but it's one of the 8,000 meter peaks, and we went in as a small American group and tried the traditional route, but very early ahead. So we were the guys who went in and tried to put up, find our way through the ice fall. And for any of you who have been to Pakistan, many probably have not, but by far really one of the most gorgeous places in the world I've ever been. And despite of some of the things that are taking place there, I also felt like some of the friendliest people I've ever encountered. And when we started our expedition, just 8 of us, we had 189 porters, and I was always mesmerized by the fact that like 5 or 6 porters per day were sent home because we consumed that much food to feed everybody that it took the weight off their shoulders, so they left. So by the time we got to base camp, there were like 100 guys. And just a very, very beautiful mountain. And I'd learned the hard way on Mount McKinley and had been to Aconcagua guiding there down in South America, and really knew what it was like to spend long hours cooking for people and taking care of them, then having to do the climbing as well. You can see how absolutely perfect Gasherbrum is, which is, a line of sight very, very close to K2, which is the real jewel of Pakistan in the Karakoram range. You go by this mountain up the Karakoram and Gasherbrum glaciers by Gasherbrum 1, which is just a little bit higher, but I think the 10th highest mountain in the world. Very, very beautiful stuff, but we completely ran into an epic of proportions that made my McKinley epic really pale in comparison. And we went all the way up to the top of we were situated in our high camp up here, and a storm came in and dumped a foot or more of snow every day for like 10 or 12 days. And part of the problem was we realized that we weren't going to get to the summit, and that what we were going to have to do is try to find our way back down through this absolute death avalanche slope, perfect avalanche conditions, which we had. It was a coin toss. Do we wait it out, or do we try to get down now? And we obviously made the right decision because we all lived, but a group that came after us is a Spanish group of guys, same situation about 3 weeks later, decided to wait it out, never seen again. They just somehow must have disappeared somewhere in this. And so as you come down this slope over to this ridge, everything just kind of falls down there. So you could see Gasherbrum 4, many believe to be the hardest mountain in the world to climb, just a shade under 8,000 meters, and our porters heading off, and really, really beautiful place. Last film clip, but many more pictures to share. Wanted to share with you, this to me was the experience that, as I said, when I was on McKinley, I was like, wow, I'm really good at this stuff. When I was on this trip, seeing multiply everything by 10 or 20 or even 100 in the worst condition that I could ever imagine in my entire life, kind of gutting through it, realizing I'm definitely ready for Everest now. So let me share with you this short clip from our Gasherbrum 2. I called it A Climber's Journal.
When I didn't hear from the team at 10, I was extremely concerned. I heard a really large avalanche come down the face at 10:30. I didn't think too much of that until noon, when again, I didn't hear anything on the radio. Lying down at Camp 1, at that point, I started to scan the glacier looking for bodies. At that point, I was formulating in my mind how I was going to tell everyone back home that these guys hadn't made it. That some of the team, at least, was dead.
And it was just pure hell on the way down. It was a nightmare place to be. Everybody has that little crispness in their voice, though, the little edge on everybody's voice. And nobody wants to admit, God, I'm scared. You know? And like nobody wants to admit it, but everybody could feel it. Everybody was tense. You think of yourself, you know, you think of yourself, but you think of other people too, and you think how close you are to everybody else on that expedition and how devastating it would be to ever lose somebody. And you thought, it could happen like that. And, you know, you just have to hold it together and pray that it doesn't happen. It was a very hard thing to deal with because your emotions run just wild. Your emotions run from one end of the spectrum to the other. On the down climb, I think visions of my family just kept, you know, popping into my head of my children, you know, like, I have to fight for every inch of this. I have to fight to survive. I just felt this drive inside me, like, I will survive. I will do this. I will crawl down on my hands and knees if I have to, because I will see my children again. I will live for my wife and my family and stuff again. I will do this. And I was so emotionally driven by that.
Yeah, I kind of get a little PTSD from seeing that. I still wake up in the middle of the night and think of that one, and that's one that just doesn't go away. But we got out of there, no problem. You know, I knew I was ready, though. This was 1996, and short time before that, I had produced a film with Rick Wilcox from International Mountain Equipment up in North Conway. His Mount Everest documentary from the 1991 New England Everest expedition. And when we were coming out, we got a message that Nova, and so, you know, as I'm saying, I send out all these tapes all the time to all these producers at networks all over the United States. Somebody said, hey, Nova just bought your Everest film. I'm like, how could they? I own it. They're like, well, somehow they figured it out. And I was like, oh. So somehow somebody stepped in, and which was cool, I suppose, but somebody stepped in and actually did negotiate a sale. And after the epic storm on Mount Everest that, as you know, made famous, if you will, by John Krakauer's book Thin Air, my film Into Thin Air, named before Krakauer's book, and I've always given him a little crap about that he stole my name for the film and the book, but it appeared nationwide on PBS Nova, and I was like, this is it, man. Now I'm off and running, you know. So all of a sudden, I'm kind of a known entity as a cameraman, climbing on mountains around the world, and I can do it. Although, to this point, I did not summit Mount McKinley. We had to bail. I did not summit Gashburn too, so I'm starting to get a little bit of a, you know, a little chip on my shoulder. But it was in early 1999 that I was called by a PBS producer, a woman by the name of Liesl Clark, and she asked me if I would like to be the high-altitude cameraman on an expedition to go and search for the bodies of George Mallory and Sandy Irvin, two Brits who had disappeared on the north side of the mountain in 1924. So we're talking 75 years had gone by, and these guys had not ever been seen. And what we do know is that 29 years later, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay did summit from the south side, but the goal of this documentary was to find out, did Mallory and Irvin actually make it to the summit first, 1924. So it was a scientific-based documentary, and we went there with a fair amount of clues, hoping that we could discover their body in this range of about 27,000 feet, where there were some previous clues by, you know, one by a Chinese climber who had made a note about seeing the body of an Old English dead at about 27,000 feet, going west from his high camp back in 1975, and that put that in about this area. And then in 1933, an ice axe was found about there. And so we wanted to look under that ice axe. So we set this huge search zone to go and look for the bodies. And while the bodies would have been a cool thing to find, what we were really after was their camera. We know that George Mallory was carrying a vest pocket camera, and we know because he had forgotten his on his way up to the summit. And on the way down, a gentleman from a failed summit attempt named Howard Somerville was asked if Mallory could borrow his camera. So it was kind of cool that the grandnephew of Howard Somerville was part of this expedition, who said he was after his family's camera, just wanted the camera back. It was pretty cool. So we head back in March of '99. I had just gotten a job, bought our first house, and promptly quit my job. And I signed and said I would not quit. I was like, this is it, this is what I do. And my wife at the time was very cool about that. She's like, this is really what you're after. So there you go. I got to hand it to her, but as I said, my former wife. So you could see how that went. And so a lot of expeditions along the way. So Mallory and Irvin, I honestly didn't know anything about those guys when they hired me. I'm like, you're going to pay me what to go climb Mount Everest? I was like, I'm in. I'm totally in. I was like, I had to look up who Mallory and Irvin were, and I was like, there is no way. There's no way in the world we will ever find them. It's impossible. But I get a shot at the summit. I get to climb with some of the great mountain climbers of the world, a lot of guys who had previously summited. So sign me up. So this is the last known photograph of Mallory and Irvin, taken at the North Col at about 23,000 feet. You can see here that he's got a spare pair of goggles, which is kind of, I'm not going to go through, the excruciating details of why we believe he did not make it to the summit. But that spare pair of goggles is kind of key, because here he is wearing one spare pair of goggles. Early oxygen apparatus. So they were just starting to test out the idea of climbing to the summit with bottled O's, if you will. This guy was really pushing his limits. It was his third expedition in 3 years. And to say that he was obsessed would be an understatement. He was completely driven, and the fact that he died on Mount Everest comes as no surprise to me, and probably didn't to any of the people who ever knew him. So on June 8th in 1924, Mallory and Irvin set out from about 25,000 feet, 26,000 feet on their way up to the summit. And they were last seen summiting, just kind of getting up and over a ridge toward the summit at about 1 in the afternoon, headed toward the summit. This is at least what the report was from one of the climbing team. And they were moving up toward the summit, maybe 2 or 3 hours away, and then some clouds came in and they disappeared. That was it. Story over for 75 years. Nothing was ever heard from them again. And to show you how quickly things change in this world, I was literally FaceTiming my kids from base camp at Everest this past spring, looking at them, like my son holding it up at school, teachers asking questions. It took 3 months for news of their death to get home. 3 months. So they had to get on horses, get on a boat, go down through India. I mean, just incredible how different things were. So what they did, just the fact that they made it to 28,000 feet, granted, died doing it, one of the greatest mountaineering accomplishments of all time. But they did not make it. So this is our group. I'm 5'9", which isn't bad. Look, I'm a midget among these guys. Literally the biggest group of guys I've ever been with in my life. Conrad Anker, Graham Hoyland, he's the grandnephew of Howard Somerville, our team doctor. There's Eric Simonson, Tap Richards, Andy Politz, Jake Norton and Dave Hahn. So since then, he's got 15 summits of Everest. He's got 3. He's got 1. He's got 1. Conrad's got 3. 1 without oxygen. This is like all-star. I just made it to the Olympics. I'm with these guys. I'm just keeping it down low key. Don't screw up, you know. So just hang on for dear life. And you know, so Graham was kind of an interesting guy. He had already summited, the first Brit, I believe, to summit. Hold on a second. There was the first Brit to summit without oxygen, I believe it was. And so, but when we got to the expedition, he immediately had a stroke, like a TIA, a trans-ischemic attack. And so we had to send him home. He was pretty bummed out. You can't tell that he's bummed out here necessarily, but at the, you know, just at the Mallory Memorial in base camp, an absolutely beautiful, stark place that really inspires us all. So where we go for the search, we're looking past this mountain. We kind of actually go around and sneak back up. This is where we're going to do our search. We set a Camp 5 in this vicinity, and our search is going to focus kind of in this area. And you can see the snow has stuck there because it actually lays back a little bit. All the other areas where there's no snow, it's pretty much too steep for snow to stick to. It'd be like a steep roof or something. And we lucked out that it was a super dry year that year. Most years in, you know, May, there would be a lot more snow on the mountain. But up we went, and we leave base camp. Base camp's at 17,000 feet on the north side, so we're talking about Tibet right now. And slowly make our way up. This is up toward the North Col. You can see there's our little guys up here. And that picture I showed you of Mallory and Irvin, the last one ever taken, was right on this saddle in here. And Everest goes up to the left, and Changsi, the north peak of Everest, to the right. On the morning of May 1st, 1999, we get up, the full moon setting in the distance. You can see the shadow of Everest being cast kind of into the atmosphere. That's Jake Norton, oxygen bottles on, O's flowing, bitter cold, probably 30 degrees, below zero, maybe 30-mile-an-hour winds, just a really bad day. I had wished that I had never become a mountain climbing filmmaker at that time. I literally wanted to throw my camera off the cliff and die. It was the cold. I've never been this cold. I was like, what the heck was I thinking when I did this? But up we go, well into the death zone, 26,000 feet. Where the death zone is when there's, you know, about a third the amount of oxygen that you're breathing at this time. So there's really nothing you can do to get better at this altitude. Your body is slowly dying. So onward and upward. And this is Andy Politz here. You can see on his back he actually has a metal detector, which would, at the time, we thought was the highest ever use of a metal detector. I really want to get in the Guinness someday. And I was like, kind of thought that was it. And I found out somebody used one higher on the south side once. So, but anyway, up we go with the metal detector, searching and crisscrossing back and forth through the search area. And Conrad, renegade and stud climber that he is, goes completely out of the search area because he's just, that's who he is. He just doing his own thing. And he's sitting there eating a little candy bar and looks over about 100 feet to his right, and lo and behold, comes across what doesn't look like much right now to you, but this is Mallory. You can see his arm right here, and this is after on a second visit, so that's why he's covered. On the first discovery of his body, his back was completely exposed to the elements, and face down, you can see that his right leg was completely broken in half, and it's like kind of bent under. There's his boot right here, and this was really perplexing to us. Like, why are his calves gone? How come there's no muscle in there? And we thought maybe it was because he was completely desiccated or something, but we kind of figured it out. The Gorax and these small birds will fly up, they'll catch the thermals, and a lot of times you'd know where a body was on Mount Everest. You'd just watch the bird, and eventually it would just go land on somebody, and because it's food. So we excavated the body as best we could, as gently as we could, looking everywhere to no avail for a camera. Never found the camera. And then afterwards, the first picture I showed you is how we actually left the body. We covered him back up, said a prayer according to the wishes of the family, the Mallory and Irvin family, and off we went. So the boot we ended up bringing home and left with the family, and that's in their possession now. And the Royal Geographical Society occasionally puts this stuff on display, but you can see this boot. So here's a boot. Would you even shovel your driveway in a leather boot like that in a snowstorm? But this guy's above 28,000 feet wearing hobnail boots. Absolutely mind-boggling, the strength and desire that this guy had. So no determination. We don't know. Irvin's body never been found. Still have yet to discover it. Some enterprising climbers out there or somebody who has a budget, I'm obviously always willing to go back. But I just told my business partner that there's no way I was ever going back. But if you have a really good budget, maybe I'll always reconsider it. This is the cool thing because I'm always working on these trips. So at least I was able to keep paying the rent, so to speak. But after the Everest expedition, Brad Washburn was obsessed with the Mallory story. He just absolutely fascinated. It would be 10 o'clock at night, the phone would ring. Hello? I have an idea about this expedition. I know where the body of Irvin is. And he would just, out of the blue, and then he'd call and leave a message 2 weeks later, and I wouldn't answer. And 10 minutes later, I have been frantic trying to get in touch with you. He was a guy possessed with ideas. And if you didn't get right back to him, boom, he'd be on you. So we talked for many years about going back and looking for Irvin. It's out there. Will he ever be found? I don't know. Brad had some great ideas of where the body is, which I'll hold close to my vest pocket. But after this trip, it was a really tough trip. A lot of interesting interpersonal relationship things happen, a lot of fighting, a lot of kind of like the money with the sale of these images. It's a book that literally is going to be written by me. But tonight's not the night to necessarily talk about it. But what I did after this is I tried to divorce myself as far away from mountain climbing as possible and continued on my expedition desires and ended up filming an expedition called the Viracocha 2 expedition. It's a reed ship, 65-foot long, 12-ton boat made of 2.5 million Totoro reeds harvested from Lake Titicaca in Bolivia and Peru. And the idea is that the guy, I know, you don't say that word, that lake, in a group of school students because the laughter is, they're like, don't ever, just say it's a big lake in Bolivia. Okay. So this trip, we left Chile, in Viña del Mar, Chile, and sailed it about 2,500 miles to Easter Island with the idea to try to prove, was it possible for South American pre-Columbian mariners to actually populate Eastern Polynesia? And even though, yes, we had a GPS, yes, we had a radio and things like that, we did it. We got to Easter Island. It took 72 days. It was a total nightmare. Therein is the chapter in my book that you'd like to read about how things aren't, this is not conducive to marriage. I just wanted to let anybody here know. Don't go on a 72-day boat trip when you hit the doldrums for 15 days. Anyway, it is a good story, and I say that half-heartedly, but this was a great trip. I wanted nothing to do with mountain climbing for a few years. Phil Buck, the captain, we were sponsored by the Explorers Club, has climbed every peak in all of the Americas, so 23 peaks. To this day, I believe he's the only human being who's ever climbed the highest mountain in all the countries of the Americas. Pretty cool. And if you were to roll the clock back at the time in Colombia, he had to pretend he was a local guy because they were trying to kidnap him, but he just like blended in and he kind of schmoozed with these like guys with guns and everything. I mean, the cool stories, and they had to have people digging for bombs and everything. I mean, just a really, really good story. I was attracted to this guy for that exact reason. If he can climb all those mountains, I'll go on a ship with him. He's leaving in a couple of months to try to take the ship from Chile to Australia. So it's called the Viracocha 3, with the idea that hopefully he could sail entirely around the globe in 5 stages in reed ships. and they're the most buoyant and seaworthy vessels, believe it or not, solid hulled. A great trip, really, really cool stuff. But the mountains are always calling. It's where my first love was. In 2014, I was asked by independent producer to film a story about a gentleman, 68 years old, this guy right here, who wanted to be the oldest man to climb Mount Everest. And he was a great-grandfather, is a great-grandfather. And so I jumped aboard. It was a well-funded film. It was pretty tough for me to say no to, heading to the south side this time, where I had done filming before but never tried to climb it. So off we went, and finally got to go to Everest Base Camp, which I had never, always stayed away from. I never wanted to go until I had the opportunity to climb. Blown away by the magnitude of this mountain. And some of you are probably familiar with Everest and the route, but that picture I just took before that, this guy right here, that's probably like down here somewhere, right? Or maybe even back here. And so you can see just this immense kind of mountain that was pioneered by Hillary and Norgay, but previously, the year before, in 1952, the Swiss were there and got really, really close with Tenzing Norgay, one of the Sherpa, a very strong climber. And so I was pretty excited to have a shot at it. And as that year would go, for anybody who follows, stories of mountaineering, on mid-April, I think it was April 16th, a massive avalanche, a Serac avalanche, fell off the west shoulder, right about here, I believe it was. It might actually, I think it was this right here. So a big Serac avalanche fell, and it just shot down this gully, and it landed in here, and it buried 16 people, just instantly killed. We were in our tents down in this area, and within the course of about a week, the entire mountain was closed. They just canceled all climbing for that year. So it was really intense experience to just see all that death and watch the bodies be flown off in helicopters and things like that. And I just thought, this is it. I'm done. I'm good. I'm already in my 50s. I haven't died. I've really like kind of kissed death like way too many times, survived avalanches on my own, and I just figured I was done. And wouldn't you know, a couple years later, roll the clock back about a year right now, I get a call from another independent producer who said, hey, we want to go and retrace the steps of Hillary and Tenzing and go and seek out their original route and do a film that would show people what it's like to climb Mount Everest and create an exhibit that will travel around the world where people can walk in and get a feeling what it's like to be at a puja in base camp, be with yaks, and I was like totally signed up. So I was the high altitude cameraman. Yeah, of course, I quit. Oh, well, so you have a budget? I'm in. Yeah, I know. It's like so fickle. My poor kids. I'm never going away again. Honey, I got some news for you. I'm going away. Oh, my kids are teenagers. They're very used to it, thank goodness. And that's what FaceTime is all about. So the cool thing is previously I had a chance at the 100th anniversary of the Explorers Club to meet Sir Edmund Hillary. Not necessarily my hero. Brad was my hero, but a very, very cool guy to talk to, really amazing. And asked him a ton of questions. And Richard Weiss, let me show you this guy right here, the president at the time of the Explorers Club, he goes, do not talk about George Mallory with him. I'm like, it's one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. He goes, do not bring it up. It's a very touchy subject. And I was just like, to this day, I have no idea why, but I think that a lot of people think that we went and did, just didn't treat the site of Mallory's death with enough respect, which I will, disagree with that until the day I die. But he's like, don't get him riled up. I was like, okay, but I felt really bad. I wanted to say, I was there. I got to see Mallory. That's who you looked for when you were on the summit. He looked over the north side to see if Mallory maybe was there. But anyway, that was kind of one of my disappointments. Nonetheless, I got to meet this guy and learn a lot about him. And that's why I was here on this trip in 2016. We got there in early April. And here's kind of a side view looking up that ice fall that I showed you a picture of earlier. Just absolutely gorgeous. Camped up. This is our little stupa, where our puja, the religious ceremony we have that the Sherpa lamas give to kind of bless us, to ask for our safety on the expedition. Really, really gorgeous and incredible place that is only arrived at by walking for about 2 weeks through the Khumbu region. Has anybody here ever hiked to Everest Base Camp? Anybody in this group? Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, and over here, so a couple of people. So this will be somewhat familiar. It's just breathtaking, just gorgeous. Like the deep ravines and the beautiful people and the views are never ending. Ama de Blanc, you see right here, they call the most beautiful mountain in the world. Absolutely gorgeous peak that you walk right by on your trip up to Everest Base Camp. So we filmed along the way because we want this documentary to be something that you could watch and really understand. And the idea would be that you'd have an idea not only of how beautiful it is, but how difficult and scary it is to climb the mountain. So we have finally arrived at base camp. Explorers Club was one of our sponsors. Here I am back. It had been 2 years since I had witnessed the avalanche and some very kind of troubling times 2 years before. And then in 2015, I did not go, but there was a huge avalanche that cut a swath, believe it or not, from the left side that cut through base camp, and where 18 people lost their lives on that avalanche. So 2 years in a row, Everest was completely cursed. And a lot of people are like, "You're crazy to go." And I was like, there's no way it could happen 3 times in a row. I don't know, I felt... I just had a feeling that it was going to be completely okay. So we had a puja. The lamas come in from a nearby monastery and say the prayers and everything. And it's just really important to the Sherpa culture to observe this. And they told us the day that we could begin climbing. They give us the auspicious date for the beginning of the expedition. And here's our team. So these are all the guys that were going to go retrace the steps of Hillary and Tenzing, which is way off the normal route now. So they're in a much more difficult, dangerous place. So we were planning it ahead, and this gentleman on the left is named Paul Giorgio. He's a Boston area guy. He's the one who completely funded it, 4-time summiter of Mount Everest, total hotshot climber. And these are our guys. This is who we really put our faith in, the Sherpa. Anybody say you can do Everest without Sherpa? You can, but why? These guys are it. They got it all. They're strong, brave, happy, really make the trip a lot safer and much more enjoyable. So the icefall, the Khumbu icefall, this is the notorious Khumbu icefall where the avalanche of 2014 had taken the lives of 16 people in just a moment. So we wind our way through this, and from a distance you think, oh, I'll be through it in really just a short amount of time. But it really, the first time we go through, as we're acclimatizing, it took probably 6, maybe 8 hours to go from 17,000 feet to about 19,000 feet. And as your body starts to acclimatize and get more red blood cells and you're feeling your altitude, if you will, and able to climb in it, you can go through it in about 3 or 4 hours. So very, very beautiful, austere, and you try to climb in the middle or early part of the day because as the day warms up, a lot of the snow melts and the ice melts, and this is when the avalanches typically happen. You can see how dwarfed we are. Here's 2 guys coming up and over this lip here. This is kind of the top of the jumble of ice, but we have to wind our way through all this. It's just painstaking and really scary. You know, you just think, one of these, this thing falls, and there's 3 people down here, it's over. And so when you're underneath that, and there's a fixed rope, say, under something like that, you go really, really fast. And that, some people just can't, but you just go as fast as you can. On the way down, literally jogging with my close Sherpa, Lakpa Sherpa, we literally run. I just did not like being in there. But you can see the ladders all strung together, kind of cool. Lots of ups and downs, very beautiful place, but On the top of that saddle there where I showed you, now this is Camp 1 at about 19,000 feet. We're just entering what's called the Western Coombe, CWM, which is a Welsh word. Just this kind of this big saddle that goes all the way up toward the Lhotse face, which you can see here, right? And so we're going to head all the way up here, set up our camp, and then the summit of Everest is kind of back behind this here a little bit. Up and over these deep crevasses, a lot of work, and we're always carrying weight up. So we took 4 trips up in order to acclimatize. We bring gear up, film, go all the way back down to base camp, head back up. It was just going up one time would just knacker you, so you'd have to go down and rest for a couple of days and then wait for a weather spell, head back up. You can kind of see now through the Western Coombe how it flattens out, but they've got these really, really deep crevasses, and they set these ropes up on each side of a ladder they'll lay over, and the idea is that this guy would sit here and pull the rope tight, and you'd lean forward, so there'd be backwards tension on it. That would, believe it or not, kind of help you get over it without being wobbly. And so never saw anybody fall into one of those. We're all clipped in, of course. You could see this guy's got his carabiner and it's clipped into the rope. This is Lakpa. This is actually coming back down from Camp 2, but beautiful place. So here's Camp 2, 21,500 feet, and our route is going to head up this wall. This is the Lhotse face. This is Lhotse, the 4th highest mountain in the world. We're going to set up our camp in this general vicinity. I think I have a closer picture that can kind of show you. Camp 2 is really awful place, just you just want out. You get there and you're like, get me out of this place. So that's kind of motivation just to keep moving or go home, whatever works for you. But you can see the line down here, people climbing up, and then this is the group of tents where the camp was. And then the line heads up here, and this is called the Yellow Band, one of the great features of Mount Everest, about 26,000 feet, which heads over to the Geneva Spur, which is this named by the Swiss, of course. It sounds kind of dumb to say, but of course it was named by the Swiss. So the Geneva Spur. So we're going to head over the Yellow Band and then jump in, and in this area is the South Col, right? And here we are heading up. Now we're up at about 23,000 feet up on the Lhotse face here. Views are absolutely spectacular. This is looking back down to Camp 2 now, and you can see we're really headed up there. This is about 3,000 feet of fairly steep to moderate slopes. And on one of the days, this is early on our first trip up the face, this just kind of snapped us back in. I guess everything was safe. There was no events or anything happening. One day, I got up to camp, a little bit above Camp 3, and somebody goes, "Did you see the guy fall?" And I'm like, "No, what are you talking about? He fell, he almost hit you." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So you come up and your head is down. You're just breathing and you're not thinking. But one of the Sherpas had gone off the end of a rope and fell from Lhotse and went 3,000 feet all the way down to the base of this face. We never saw him. Apparently he went right by. So of course he was not found. But it snapped us into reality. It's like, okay, this isn't just this beautiful trip with cool guys climbing a mountain. It's like, this is life and death every day. And so you can see this is where the gentleman had kind of lost control of his rope, literally all the way down into this area here. Real stark, scary, steep, hard, bulletproof ice, and we're carrying our oxygen up. This is Lakpa, who was my main partner. I climbed a lot with him and ultimately was able to summit with him. Even though I hated this camp, Camp 3, 23,000 feet, it was steep, it was really dangerous. You had to keep roped in whenever you left the tent. By far the best views of any camp I've ever been in. So I slept here on 2 nights. I was like, I hope I never sleep here again, but I'm going to take a zillion pictures. So you've got, let me go back to that. This is Cho-Oyu, which is the 6th highest mountain in the world in the distance. And this is Pumori, what they call Everest's sister. Just beautiful, beautiful stuff. So down in these clouds, way down there is where our base camp is. And you can see Camp 2 kind of situated in there. kind of more of a detail of Cho-Oyu. Big flat summit, 26,800 feet, I think, something like that. Beautiful place. And it was really warm, so till 6 o'clock at night before the sun would go down, we'd just sit there lounging and drinking tea. And but then out the back door of my tent, that's the summit ridge of Everest. And so here's Tembe Bota, one of our Sherpa, great guys, had summited 3 times before. One of the old guys, 44-year-old Sherpa, still climbing, which I'm 10 years older than him, so he's not really that old. But so we're going to head up over here. This is literally the summit ridge of Everest right here. Bad day to be up there. That is not a cloud. That is wind howling over the top, and the condensation of moisture in the air creates, if you will, snow particles. So it's just like on Mount Washington. Same thing happens. It's not a cloud. It's just wind is howling over. So we know on this day nobody's going anywhere. The Geneva Spur again, here we are. You can see that prominent feature. Looks so easy, piece of cake. It's absolute torture. Absolute just torture. Literally, it's like if somebody said, you're going home right now, turn around, I would have quit on the spot. I just wanted it over with. But I was like, here I am. What else am I going to do? So you get this far. Here's Camp 4, 26,000 and change, maybe 26,100 feet. Our plan, where we were at this camp, obviously here's the main route, goes up like this toward the summit. And then you kind of go up and over South Summit, and this is literally pretty much the top about there, back behind that. Our job to retrace the steps of Hillary and Tenzing was to go up here and go way out on this slope here, and we were going to look for some of their earlier remnants of previous camps. And nobody had been there since 1953. There's literally nobody's been there. So we were like, let's go pioneer this. Figured after seeing the Mallory expedition, this could be a really cool way to tie things together. So on the morning of the 21st, about midnight, we left our camp at 26,000 feet and headed up. I think you can see our tents down there. Really, really beautiful. The sun coming up ever so slightly. We're looking now at Makalu here, the 5th highest mountain. This is Lhotse here. Absolutely stunning as the light starts to come into the sky. And this is where we were going to take our right turn, if you will, toward the Hillary and Tenzing activity. It doesn't look it, but it was really windy that day, and the ice was pretty solid under our boots. And so we sent, I know it sounds crazy, of course we sent a Sherpa first, which is, he would not have let us go. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but Tembe, the guy who was in the tent earlier, he goes first, and you can see, so we string a rope out, and he's way out there. The wind is just howling, and it's a lot of ice. So he puts in a snow picket, ting, 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 and we're 6 guys up there with one 150-foot rope. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. Some of the motion picture stuff I got that day was absolutely captivating. And so, then Rinji, one of our other Sherpas, heads out to him. We're all going out, and Paul, Giorgio, safety-minded, he just goes, everybody stop. Okay? He goes, it's over. Like, what? He goes, no more search. No, we're just done. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is it. This is what we've been doing for 2.5 months. And here we are. He goes, I could never live with myself if somebody died. And I got a really bad feeling right now. So I was like, just let me film for 10 minutes. Just everybody stay put. I got a bunch of footage, and we called those guys back, went back down to camp, everything canceled. He goes, I'd never be able to do this if somebody died. So a huge disappointment, but the right decision. I'm like the opposite. I'm like, screw it, let's go. Are you kidding? We're so in. Look at how close we are. So I mean, it was good. That's how you stay alive with people who are prudent like that, I guess. So we get back down to Camp 4 at 26,000 feet, and Paul's like, all right, I'm going to pack up. I'm going to get out of here. There's literally, dead bodies around, and there's like garbage and, human feces everywhere and stuff. It's like, it was just this like post-apocalyptic zone down at Camp 4, really depressing. And Paul's like, I'm done, I'm packing. I just said, I'm going to the summit. And he goes, what? I was like, there's no way I'm leaving. Look at how close we are. So everybody left except for one of my climbing partners, Lakpa. We stayed. Everybody took off. And that night, I took a nap. We were with the plan to leave at 8 o'clock in the evening, thinking it might take 12 hours to get to the summit. So I took a nap, and he wakes me up at 7, and he wakes me up in the pinnacle of this dream the dream was that the weather was really bad, and we weren't going to go to the summit. And I remember in the dream going, oh, I'm so relieved because it's really dangerous up there, and I really actually don't feel like going through the effort of climbing the mountain. And this is my dream. And then he wakes me up. I'm like, so we're not going? And he goes, no, we're going. I was like, you just told me we're not going. And I was confusing dream and reality. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh my God. So I was hypoxic, obviously. And, and he was like, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. Just forget everything I just said. And at 8 o'clock, it's amazing. Hypoxia will really mess you up. But so at 8 o'clock, we left camp ahead of everybody. Just as it's getting dark, gorgeous. And I knew it. I was like, this is it. I'm not going to die. I'm totally got this. And I'm with one of the strongest guys I've ever climbed with in my life. And up we go. This is previously with the other guys, but up we go, passing the earlier point of the search previously with less than 24 hours before. And, leaving Camp 4 well behind. You can see our camps. This is kind of out of order, really, but it can show you kind of what it looks like looking back down. We've got the tents. And as it starts to get dark, we pass the bodies, if you will, of 2 people who were at the point still alive with other climbers who were calling for rescues of these 2 people. And at the time, I had suggested that we go full into a rescue mode at the time and pull one guy down. And his gloves were off. He had obviously become hypothermic and took his gloves off. And Lakpa, speaking in, I'm not even sure what language they used, but it was either Sherpa or Indian, an Indian dialect. He said that this guy was beyond saving. And I was like, I can't go unless my conscience is completely cleared. So he's like, it's not, there's nothing we can do. So upward we went. The other person that we saw was rescued. A woman, an Indian woman who was able to make it back down. But as you can see, here we are. We're getting up to the top. We're headed toward the south summit, which is about what is the south summit? 27,900 feet or so. Lakpa kept turning around and looking in my eyes, and he'd stare in my eyes. Are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. Because I think maybe I scared him from the dream I had. He's like, I'm just looking in your eyes to make sure you're okay. And he goes, what do you need? And I was like, you're not going fast enough. He's like, no. I was like, I'm totally serious. You go twice as fast. This is too slow. And he's like, no. And I'm Lakpa, go as fast as you can go. I am in. I'm all in. And he goes, okay, put your head down, look at my heels. And he just hauled ass. So we get up to the summit, toward the summit. Instead of taking 12 hours, it took us a little over 6 hours, about 6 hours and 40 minutes. We just boogied up there and got there at 2:40 in the morning. It was absolutely breathtaking. You can see some snow, but it was actually really beautiful up there. The full moon had peaked about 10 minutes before we got there. I looked it up on all the calendars and everything. So you could see the summits glowing with an undercast sky and just the peaks above about 25,000 feet or so showing. At this time, this is when I kind of got really businesslike. We didn't hug. We didn't high five. I just said, I need a photograph. I need to get the picture of the absolute top. I want to look over to the north side, and then we'll be done. And he's like, okay. I was like, all business. I was like, let's get out of here. I just wanted to go. And my goal was to not take my gloves off once. So I actually had to ask him for help. And now here's the total fail. We did leave with 2 other guys, and so I could access my camera. I left my camera in somebody else's backpack, and we went so much faster than him that I didn't have my camera with me, which is like, that's what I do as a professional. So Lakpa pulls out this teeny little, it it was smaller than this. And this is what all these pictures were, this little camera. He goes, here, take my camera. So thank goodness, or else this would just be a show and tell. I would show you my summit suit and try it on. But, you know, this is it. So you can see how beautiful it was. This is kind of the final steps. Here's Lhotse in the background, right? Down Camp 4, way down in there. And here's the final steps to the summit. Got my headlamp on, looking down, kind of getting my backpack arranged. And we spent probably 30 minutes. And right in this spot, right about here, I grabbed a rock as a souvenir. And down we went, and we were back down in base camp after, you know, taking some pictures. This is a postcard that one of the llamas had given me. And he said, if you take a picture of you on the summit with that, and then print the photograph, I'll put it up on my wall. So if you ever trek into Everspace Camp, again, did you go to Lama Geshe's, Peter? So you know in Lama Geshe's place, he's got the pictures. So that's up on his wall now, this picture, which is really cool. But anyway, so pretty incredible. On the way down, we finally saw the closest teams to us. So we were well ahead of them. You could see that there's, I don't know what this guy's doing, but he's still down in Camp 4. It's like, good luck with that, buddy. So we passed. It was still dark out. It was absolutely gorgeous, and it was after the main summit rush. You know, there had probably been 100 people trying for the summit 3 days before, and I said I'd rather not go to the summit than be part of just a massive humanity. You know, and he's like, okay, there's a coin toss. You might never get to the summit, but yeah. So we passed these people. They were on their way up going really slow. I mean, I volunteered to help and be a guide for the Washburn Challenge. I'll be totally patient if I'm with a group that goes slow. But on this kind of stuff, I have no patience for slow. It's like, just let's do this. So it was really cool. So we passed some people, handed our camera off. A guy from Washington, D.C., who trains in the White Mountains, never got his name, took a picture for us. You can see the full moon setting, not unlike the full moon setting back in 1999, kind of tying together full moons. Finally, after 17 years, my dream of summiting had come true. And, you know, the sun peeking up over the South Summit. Our encounters on the way down with the gentleman who had not survived was a little bit overwhelming for me. And then we encountered two other people before we got to the South Col. This was after I was all happy right here, because when we passed these guys, I just thought, I will never feel joy again as long as I live. Why do people climb this mountain? Why do people go and die here? And it just really seemed like this existential kind of question that I knew I'd never be able to answer, but having seen, you know, people taking their last breaths just really took the joy out of having summited an hour before, out of it. But, you know, all things come with perspective, you know, and I guess I was able to kind of dig down deep and figure out some deeper meaning to it all, and realize that my purpose was not necessarily just to summit for my own good, but maybe to share a story that might inspire a human being or a kid at school who wants to have goals or passions and learn how to persevere and go after things that they believe in. And that's how I kind of brought it all full circle. And so back down we head. You can see this is the Geneva Spur, now much better going down. You know, we head down through this area, down the Lhotse face, and really kind of a time to reflect on the way down. We got to the South Col and took a nap, and we're gone. We went all the way back down to Camp 2 that day that we summited, which is a big day. And then the very next morning, woke up, had some tea, popcorn, believe it or not, was the best popcorn I've ever had. Then down to a base camp, and we were there like 24 hours later. Absolutely phenomenal view from my tent, like after getting there, kind of like, you know, cue the angels singing. And, So we spent about 6 days in base camp cleaning. As I said, the post-apocalyptic, this is a question that always comes up, is there garbage everywhere? Well, we spent a lot of time cleaning up anything that we had brought up, plus some extra garbage. So we actually had a negative impact on the mountain other than having been there. But everything we brought in, we literally carried back out on our backs. So now, for me, it's just a time of reflection and looking forward to this film that will come out someday. I'm not producing it. I've handed it off to the producer who's doing some editing now. And taking some time to focus on important stuff like my kids who are, this is about 10 years ago up in Tuckerman's Ravine when they were 8 and, about 12. So this summer, many of you will be passing through this area with hopefully a lot less snow in July. But, that was what it was all about. My kids, when I was on Everest this year, I literally FaceTimed my kids and I was like, I don't know, I don't feel the desire that I used to have for it. I don't really care about it right now. And my older son, he literally said, don't come home unless you summit. Are you serious? What if I die? And he goes, just don't come home. I mean, he meant it. He was drop dead serious. Do not, and he there's an expletive in there too. He's a teenager, so he can do that, but he was like, do not come home unless you summit. And I thought of them every day, all day. This is it. And when I summited, I know that news got to them and they went nuts. They went crazy. So it was like my gift to my kids for all those months and years I was away from them, pursuing like kind of selfishly my dreams and my goals. Always just was able to maintain this love and for them and inspire them. Who knows what they're going to go after someday. I know they don't like mountain climbing that much, but they like football. But hey, I love football too. So, so that's it. I really am thrilled to have had this opportunity to share some of my stories with you. I hope all of you will take part in some way with the Washburn Challenge this summer. I want to be there and experience it with you. And before I go, look me up on Facebook.com, right? Thom Pollard. Friend me. I've got tons of Everest stuff, lots of writing, stories, pictures. You just have to scroll down a little bit. I'm non-political. You won't get thrown back in a few months, I promise. It's just really adventure related, very, very cool stuff. So anybody just say, hey, I was there at the talk. I wanted to friend you. Boom, you're right in. You're welcome to be my friend. I'd love to stay and share more stories with you. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Thom. Very good.
Yeah, pleasure.
So we got questions. Were they written out, or do people just want to? How are we supposed to do this?
How much faster do you go down than you go up?
Oh, that's a great story. Well, a lot. So it took us 6 hours 40 to get up. Took us about a little under 3 to get down, and we took our time. We just literally, it was like jogging almost at times. We just really hauled. And we were back down in base camp at 6 in the morning. Yeah, it was really good. And the weather was optimum, so it was just perfect. Got some. Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
Way.
What's that?
How much your way?
How much? Well, the down. I don't know. The down suit's pretty heavy. These boots are like probably 4 pounds, 5 pounds a piece, or together rather. Pretty heavy. But I wasn't going to chance losing my toes. On McKinley in '92, I thought I was going to lose my feet, so I put hand warmers in my boot, and it worked. I have no problem saying I did that. This is probably 3 pounds, maybe, the down suit. Anybody want to try it on? It's a great photo op. So seriously, anybody want to try the down suit on? You'll be sweating in about 2 minutes. Okay, so what advice would I give to someone planning to hike or climb to the top of Everest? Wow, yeah, that's, I'd say, for me, it's an emotional thing. Like the preparation was more just this ability to withstand long periods of discomfort and cold and the potential for boredom, and that to me is like always the hardest part. But I loved it because I would read a lot of books and I would write tons in my journal, books of journals. So the training, the actual technical part it's just always there. But I would ice climb in the winter, I'd do a presidential traverse in the winter time, and then slowly graduate up. So for whoever ask the question, if they have never been to Mount McKinley or Aconcagua in Argentina, I would strongly advise doing kind of an expedition like that. It's all compact. So that's a good start. So who asked that? Are you really interested in doing it? So you're really going to go climb? You're on an expedition? That's fantastic. Excellent. North side is so cool. Really good. Good. Yeah. So have you been to other mountains and? Oh, you're in. You're in. So should I tell you where I think Irvin's body is? And yeah, bring your camera. Congratulations and best of luck to you. Yeah.
So these questions get increasingly metaphysical as we go, okay?
I'm down.
All right,
I'm down.
So
all right.
The next one.
What do I attribute?
Success for failures.
So why are people unsuccessful?
Yeah.
And then I can't necessarily read that part, but
Sherpa, just example, Sherpas, it's suggested hypotheses.
Okay.
Sherpas,
Yeah.
et cetera. Determination of the climbers, whatever.
Yeah, you go to. I spent the cool thing about 2016. I shared a base camp with a team of doctors who were there with the Himalayan Foundation. So we got to see people every day who were going there for different ailments. So somebody might have gotten snowblind or frost nip on their fingertips or something, and you'd see there was a real percentage of people who had kind of lost their nerve. They would go up into the ice fall and they'd witness a big chunk of ice fall and think, oh my gosh, I could die. And they would come down and say, I think this frostbite that I have is too much, I'm going to go home. So they'd lose their nerve, and it's totally cool, but they'd kind of find an ailment, if you will. But now the 3 people that I passed who died on my way down from the summit, coincidentally, they were all parts of very low budget expeditions, super low budget, and that's not a bad thing. If you've got a lot of experience, low budget's not a problem because you're experienced and you kind of, your buddy looks out for you like, dude, you're acting weird, like we're turning around. Now you get a group of 20 Indians who are these really strong guys, great group of guys. They're on an absolute bargain basement expedition, paying very little money. So the Sherpa that were hired to guide them is totally inexperienced, no training, never been up above, say, 26,000 feet. So a guy starts to get hypoxic or hypothermic, they don't know what to do. And when when one of the climbers becomes hypothermic, becomes violent, so he starts to attack the Sherpa. And what do? They just run away and leave these people. So without, almost to a T, all these people were on really low budget expeditions. And people are like, you're crazy, you pay $60,000 to climb? Go for it. It's the way to do it. Now, I never had a guide, really. I was always getting paid, but always climbing with, world-class climbers. So I just kind of got to, just be in their shadow a little bit. But anyway, that's a great question because, why do some people die and why do some people not? It's very metaphysical. So you want to jump in there with a question?
Yeah. How do you think that climate change might affect mountaineering?
How is climate change and how could it affect mountaineering? Huge. Climate change is, well, listen, I'm not making a political statement. I swear I'm not. But I will tell you, in base camp, I was sitting there one day with a guy who's been going to Everest Base Camp for 20 plus years, and he said, see that wall over there on Nuptse, which is the mountain kind of to the right of the icefall? He goes, that was always covered with snow and glaciers, and it's all rock now for the last 15 years, just more and more rock. And so things are becoming more and more unstable. So in 2014, if you will, the chunk of ice that fell into the icefall, very much due to a warming trend. if you will. And honestly, I mean, just difference in temperature is one thing. It isn't political, but they say that block of ice had been kind of ready to fall for years. And they say that it was probably the size of a 6 or 8 story building, just whoosh, tumbling down. So great question. And then in the very first picture of my talk was Shivling in India. That film I was doing was on the melting glaciers. And they're saying that the Gangotri Glacier, which feeds the Ganges River, will be dried up in 50 years. So there's 1 billion plus people who thrive off of the Ganges River. So mountaineering, that's one thing, unstable mountains like in the Alps that are constantly falling apart. But, now we're talking about people, starvation and famine and things like that. So that's a fantastic question. Yeah, okay.
One or both?
Why do I think some people desire to push human limits? Yeah, and then how do I think it changed your perspective to see people near you die and be close to death myself? Yeah, there's the metaphysical stuff just going in. Yeah, some people really have it in them to want to push the limits. And one of the conversations I had with Conrad Anker, he's always able to really articulate it. He's the guy who actually found George Mallory. Anybody who follows mountaineering probably knows the name. He used to say, we'd still be climbing around in trees, right? Or we'd still be swimming in the ocean, if you will, wherever we came from, if there wasn't something beyond our environment that wasn't really appealing to us, where we took a risk, And then there's people who enjoy taking risks, and I did to a pretty significant degree for a long time, and a lot of the guys I climb with are able to push the limits to another place. And I think in some respects that's how evolution happens. And you could say that's the Darwin theory in, working, because people die doing it too. But it's also people pushing because they want to see what's out there. It's the unknown. And when you feel the unknown, for me personally, I feel refreshed. I feel like I've got a greater purpose on this planet, other than, granted it's important, other than just raising 2 kids and going to work and everything. I just want to see something out there. What does it really feel like to look in the jaws of death? I've been in 2 avalanches, and one of them in particular, I was 100% positive I was going to die. And it was just it was terrifying in a way, but it was this really remarkable experience to pop out at the bottom of the avalanche and just go, whoa! Oh my gosh, I was this close, and talking and excitedly, and the things that I was able to kind of experience about how much I can withstand. As I said, in that storm on Mount McKinley, I knew I was really good at this. And then coming down from Gasherbrum, 12 hours of right on the edge, really this is perfect. This is what I'm here for. So now I don't desire it the way I used to, but I feel like it enriches me. But it's also could be irresponsible too, to a certain extent, depending. I won't climb K2. I won't try Everest without oxygen because I have kids. I mean, that's where I draw the line. It sounds kind of crazy, but I refuse to. I'm not going to do that to my kids. I've lost plenty of brain cells, so. Yeah. Next, yeah. If there's a budget, no. Just, where there's a budget, there's a way. So you got another one there?
I don't have any more, but any other questions?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Sure.
So is going down a mountain always harder than going up a mountain?
Is going down harder than going up? Yeah. I always felt like a lot of the mistakes were made coming down. Going up is like an exertion part. You're pushing and there's more strain, if you will, but coming down is so much easier. It's like going downstairs. So if you trip going up, it's oh, and you just grab on and you're good. Coming downstairs, you make a little slip. You're like, oh my gosh, I could have broken my neck, right? So it's a lot harder coming down. Definitely. You're really relying on ropes working and all your pitons being put into place and working. So, yeah.
Why did you plan to go to the summit at night? Why don't you do that during the daylight?
Yeah, so the question was, why did I go to the summit, leave in the night? Well, if you roll the clock back 20-something years or so, people would leave at, say, 2 o'clock in the morning with the idea of getting there in daylight, in the middle of the day. And slowly but surely, they just keep scaling it back earlier in the day because afternoon clouds typically come in on any big mountain. And so afternoon, there's probably not good climbing. There's more winds because the heat has heated things up. So we left at 8 thinking we'll be there at 7 in the morning or so. We went way too fast, which is really good. I'm glad we did. Not many people summit in the middle of the night, so I'm kind of happy that that happened. Any Mallory questions? There's usually a lot of Mallory sleuths here. Did he make it to the summit? No? Well, thank you. You guys, I'm going to stick around. If you want to ask me questions after, I'm not going anywhere for a while, so thanks again. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.